So I've been working really hard on doing impressions, and I'm going to try one now. I don't want people to be too harsh in the comment section. I'm new to this, but I thought I've been working so hard the past few weeks. I'm going to do an impression for you and be kind. Okay, this is going to be an impression of myself. I'm brilliant. Everybody else is stupid. I'm so pretty. When I first came to Alaska, I lived in the snowiest city in the US, and the reason for that was simply because I wanted to live in the snowiest city in the US for one winter. I knew I wasn't going to stay there permanently because I already had plans on where I would be moving to the next spring. In the next spring, I wound up getting a nice little cabin for a couple of months, and then I lived in a microwave dinner box. And for those of you who are new to the channel, that was a tiny house. And I was happy that in the tiny house I didn't have running water and some of the things that we're all used to having, because that's how I wanted to start my first winter in the interior. When I told people here that I had no running water and the tiny house lacked other things, I figured they wouldn't care, as so many people here live in those dry cabins. But instead they said to me, "Your first winter in the interior should be as comfortable as you can make it, because it's a hard place to live and you can chase yourself away from Alaska if you make it too hard for yourself in the beginning." But I always replied with the way I think, which is, I like starting out with less because that means the future can't get any worse. For example, I started out in the interior in my first winter without running water, and I knew in the future that would mean when I left the tiny house and was able to get my own cabin, if it didn't have running water, everything would be the same. But if I did have running water, everything would be better. At the same time, if I started my first winter in the interior with running water, and I wound up getting a cabin in the future without running water, things are getting worse. It's never good when things get worse. That's just the way I think. Things should be harder in the beginning so that they become easier later. And whenever I told people this, they always smiled because although it doesn't really make much sense, it kind of makes sense. And what I found often was they didn't disagree with me, but they just had that look on their face that the person that they're speaking to is just thinking in another way that many would consider backwards. And that's fine because some of the most brilliant people in this world have been very backwards. And if that puts me in their class, then I may be the most brilliant person living in Alaska. In all seriousness, though, I still wish the tiny house was better insulated so that I could have stayed the entire winter, but I also have to admit where I'm staying now in this lodge is very comfortable. So at the end of the day, I did wind up doing what the Alaskans I had spoken to previously had suggested, even though that was never my plan. And my parents always watch my videos, and I just want to tell my dad, "See, you were wrong when I was growing up. I always listen."